And welcome back to Open Studio. I'm Steve Leahy. What is going on, everyone? How is your week going? All right, we're gonna what do I got here? I don't know what I got. All right, we're gonna knock out this block right here. So we finished up this kind of brick-colored building, as we saw last week, because Editing Steve is getting really good at Google Maps. That is a luxury condo apartment type building. All right, I started putting in some stuff here, but I was looking at the reference and I think I was making some of it up. So I want to kind of reset everything. This white is terrible. So it's the same thing. Since last week, that's the drop I put out last week, and it just spread all out and it sucked up all the water, which is great. That's what the wet palette's supposed to do. But it makes the paint, at some point, the paint just becomes unusable. It just becomes too watered out. Not thinned out, but watered out. Because you can thin out the paint and it'll still work for you, but if you add a bunch of water to it, it really starts to act goofy. So I'm going to put on a new drop of white, and I actually broke my... What I do is I have a big bottle of white and I transfer it into this old 4-ounce bottle that I've been using forever, and I finally split the bottle. So the paint comes out the side now, which isn't good. Anyway, there's a lot of white right there now, so that's not great, but whatever. All right. So yeah, I'm going to take out the little black line that I put in. Kind of reset that and then take a look at what it's really supposed to be. Because there is a darker area down there, but this is the street. So, and this little boulevard goes all the way through. The other one I have a question on is this little white thing that I put in here. I think this is the roof from the building that goes across, but I also think it's too big. That's exactly what it is. Okay. So we're going to take that out too, because I know where I'm going now with all that. Like I said, those are just those landmarks. So now that I'm kind of zooming in on those, I can adjust them as I need them. Yeah. All right, so tonight's soapbox comes again from Brian Moore. So Brian Moore had a good one from last week. Brian asks, here's a soapbox idea. Should an inspiring artist recreate images that are like or ones they do? So I'm sorry, let's try that again with correct English on my part. Should an inspiring artist recreate images they like or ones they can do, or should they concentrate on their own art? So the quick answer to that is yes. Yeah, I mean, you should absolutely recreate art from artists that you like. That's how you kind of come up with your own style, because your style is ultimately going to be a combination of other things you've seen, and that's fine. That's what we do. The trick is you're going to make them your own, and the only way to make them your own is to get those tools in your toolbox to start. You want to get those techniques down that you admire, and it doesn't necessarily mean a specific artist, just maybe a specific style. That artist that you admire is working in a particular style as well. I'm going to include this building, this gray building up here too, just because it's kind of in the mix. So as I come up with different colors, that will work on this building, I'll just jump into that building too. So it's more of a, what's in the brush type of thing than, than the buildings I'm working on. So back to Brian's question. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's the whole goal. You look at artists that you really like, and then you figure out what they're doing, and you learn their kind of how they're doing what they're doing. And then you can take that and apply that in your own way, because no matter what, yeah, you may find an artist that you really love and you're like, man, I wish that's exactly what I want. I wish I had thought of something like that and all this other fun stuff. But as you work, there's black paint in the bottom of the palette. That's not ideal. As you work, even if you've fallen in love with a certain type of art or artist, as you get going and as you start painting, you're going to want to change things. You want to make them your own. You're like, oh yeah, I love this, but I really wish that, or this, I feel like, this would be a cool idea, or, it'll lead into something else, and and you'll make it your own, and that's the whole point. So so that's what I mean. Yes to both those things. You want to learn from other people. You want to get down the things that you really enjoy about what someone else is doing. But then you also want to concentrate on your own stuff. You want to make sure that, when you go to apply what you've learned, that you apply it in a way that's cool to you. And don't feel like you have to come up with something either. It's not like, like I learned something from someone and then I have to come up with something new on top of that. It's not what I'm talking about, because that takes time. The more you work at your own stuff, the more it'll kind of evolve on its own. And the way that happens usually, even if you're not trying, is, yeah, you like this one artist, but you also like this other artist, and you like this other artist over here too. And then you're learning things from all 3 artists or 4 or 10 artists, and guaranteed you're going to put all those things together, and then all of a sudden you're going to have your own thing. You know what I mean? So I can't stress it enough, because I stressed about this a lot when I was younger. It's like, oh, I see all these artists with these definitive styles, like you look at them and you immediately know it's them, That's a really cool thing. It's like the pinnacle of what you want to be in your art. You want to have people say, oh, that's a Brian Moore, or, that's a Steve Leahy, or whatever. That's great, and you want to strive for that. But that comes from doing it, and comes from you filtering all this stuff that you're picking up into your own thing, Now, if you have one favorite artist and you hammer on that artist and that's all you do is their style of art, you're going to kind of be that artist. You know what I mean? Your stuff is going to look like that person. And that does happen a lot in everything, in music. And, you have an artist that's totally like, loves this musician and absolutely models their whole career after this one musician. And they become a version of that musician. That's not what you want either, And like I said, the only way to do that is if you're focused on one particular, person, and that's all you do. Then you kind of lose yourself and you just become a clone. And we don't want that. That's just, because there's no point in that. Because what you're doing is something that's already been done now, This other person is doing that, and you don't need to, So that's the big thing. Don't stress too much about it. It's great that you're thinking about it, because a lot of people don't think about it, and you can, obviously you can run into a lot of problems there too if it never crosses your radar. That's lame. But that's a question that you're going to be asking yourself your entire career. While you're making art. Because again, it ties right back to artists looking at their stuff in a much different way than other people view their art. So, you're not going to think your art is where it needs to be, where other people, would really like it. You're also not going to see your uniqueness in your art as easily as other people are. So while you feel like all you're doing is copying someone else, and, you're not really coming up with your own thing, really at the same time, other people see that uniqueness. And, it's good to listen to other people too. Like, for instance, if you do kind of lock in on one artist and, you're unhealthy locked in, that kind of thing, like we were just talking about, if someone says, hey, I love your stuff, it really reminds me of, this person. That's not, an insult or whatever, or negative critique. However, if everyone says that, if everyone says, hey, your stuff looks like this guy or girl, and it does, because that's all you're really looking at, then you need to kind of take a step back and look at what you're doing, because again, you don't want to be stuck in that trap where you're just making other people's art. That's lame. And of course, I've said all this, and I need to preface this too. Copying someone else's art for yourself as you learn is always okay to me. posting that stuff without giving credit, it's what we talked about before, giving credit where credit is due. Putting that stuff out there is not okay, without giving that person credit. Like if you copy, a piece of art from someone because you're learning, and you want to show people, that's great, that's awesome, because then people could say, hey, yeah, that's awesome, I know this artist does this particular thing this way, and that'll help you, kind of keep going. However, if you don't let people know, first of all, if you're following a large artist with a large following, everyone's going to know. If you post something and it's a copy of that person's art, you're going to get called out on it, which is the way it should work. However, you might not get called out on it too, and that's bad, because you never want to take credit for someone else's work. Period. End of story. You should never sell anyone else's work. So you make a copy of someone's work and then you sell it. That's all bad too. And that all goes with just common sense. You don't want to get any of that. But if you want to use their work to, I'm going to try to get some of this black paint out, or watery black. But if if you're using their artwork to learn, that's been going on forever. For as long as there's been art, human-made art, there have been people who have been copying it to learn. People go into museums all the time with a sketchbook and, copy the art to learn how these artists were seeing, So that's all great. Again, just remember, if you're gonna put it out there, though, you really have to give credit where credit is due. So that's pretty much what I have to say about that. It's, I don't know. Yeah, and it's like I said, that never changes. That continues on your entire career. You're always seeing something cool, seeing something new, and and it inspires you, and then you say, okay, like how can I pull that into what I do, and that's how it works. Now, that's why I love looking at a bunch of different things, not getting locked into one thing, because if you want your own style, that's the way that it happens. Again, if you're locked in on one person, one style of art, that's what you're going to do. Now, if you are locked into one style of art, the way you come up with something new in that style of art is look outside that style of art. You know what I mean? It's like everyone is doing the same kind of stuff within that. So, you pull out something that's from another, style of art, but you're incorporating it in that style that you like, and now you've come up with something new. That's how that happens. My favorite example, and I use it all the time, is my buddy Keith Hansen. Keith is a motorcycle painter. He started his career painting funny cars, and does all kinds of custom paint, crazy airbrushing and pinstriping and all that fun stuff. So he's also into fashion. He really dresses well. He appreciates what it takes to make a good piece of clothing, and he likes that. And that stuff has crept into his motorcycle work. Now you would think, how does the fashion industry connect to these like huge motorcycle dudes that have these Harley Davidsons? But the way he does it, it's amazing. It's how his colors are put together. It's the shapes that he uses in his graphics, and no one else was thinking of it. No one else was doing that because they're all stuck with Skulls and Flames. You know what I mean? He can do Skulls and Flames too, but his stuff takes on a whole different feel, and it's because he's into stuff other than what is in his style, and in his accepted style, I guess, in that industry. So that's how you come up with your own thing. Look outside. Look at. It doesn't have to be like groundbreaking either. You can just look into what are your hobbies, and those hobbies might translate into something cool that you could apply back into your art, If you're into, fishing, or, I don't know, bike riding, or whatever it is. You can just take little bits and pieces of that, even if they don't seem unrelated. Fishing, for instance. You're into custom painting, but you also love to fish on the weekends. So you pull up this rainbow trout, and this rainbow trout has the most amazing colors in it, that you would never think to put together. So that's what I'm talking about. Now you have that palette that nature gave you, but now you can use it in whatever you're working on, So that's where that individual style comes from, because it sounds stupid to say it out loud, but individual style comes from the individual. It's like the melting pot of that person's likes and loves and interests and all that stuff. So, as you're trying to figure it out, don't worry too much. Just concentrate on you. It's easier than it seems. And I wish someone had talked to me about that when I was younger, because I used to up and up hate the way my stuff looked. I would look at all these other artists and just, my stuff just I'm like, I have a style, but it sucks. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. Where really just, where I was just, I needed to not care about it as much as I did, because it was holding me back, because I was so worried about having some sort of identifiable style that I was like missing the point on, getting the skills down, or, just like I said, concentrating on my own sensibilities and what I liked and, what looked good to me, those things, because those things are your style. So, and with that, we've done that little block, which is totally exciting. That went quick. Let's put a little bit of airbrushing on that, since I am thinking of that. Oh, left that with stuff in it. That's not good. This does not have stuff in it, which is also good. So, Brian, I hope that answered your question, because it really was a good one. So yeah, the answer to that is yes. All right. Same deal. I've just got black in the airbrush now, so I'm going to first I'm going to get this started over here, because I haven't used this brush yet today. So I'm just going to kind of go in and add a little bit of, random black airbrushing. Not black, but you know what I mean. Just to kind of break up some of those little paintbrush marks and increase the value of some of the little marks, and that'll let the lighter ones kind of stand on their own. This little brick building, I didn't get to airbrush that last week, so we'll put a little bit more airbrushing on that. Same thing with this gray building up here. Add a little bit down in the area where it stops. Good, that's excellent. That gets the road in there. What's going on with that big building? That's a beauty. I was looking at that white building behind. What do I want to do here? Now, see, I didn't expect all this. I figured it would take the whole episode to do that block, but it didn't. Yay. So, do I feel good about this building? Yeah. Yeah. Sort of, kind of. That butts right up against the road. Yeah, let's finish on this side of this white building here, since that's pretty clear. Yeah. And all right, so for me, I don't even know if I have a style. You know what I mean? Like, first of all, it's also what, where you are in your work too. Sometimes your style is a subject matter. Like, I guess these miniature landscapes are what, what I do a lot of. So if someone sees one of these, they might think, hey, that, I've seen Steve do those, so that might be a Leahy kind of thing. But I stopped worrying about it a while ago. Again, for those reasons I said before, but also, I don't, yeah, all right, at the end of the day, it'd be nice to be collecting a super fat paycheck, right? So, like, you know, like Warhol with his soup cans and all that. But on the other side of that, if that happens, you are now locked into whatever it was that made you, you know, a household name. And this brush, I don't know what's going on with this brush. This brush is acting like it's old, but it's brand new. It's splitting, and I'll let it dry out and show you. It's going to happen quick, and I don't know why. I never have a problem with these brushes. There we go. Well, let's let it dry. Oh, I'll let it dry a little more. There we go. So, where we go? See that? That's what an old brush does. See how it's split into two right there? So now, I mean, I might just need to clean this. You know, it might have dried out at some point that I didn't realize it. That's why it's doing that. But that is not a good thing. Because like I said, that's a brand new brush. So I'm going to jump back to this older 0 because it's a bigger brush, but the bristles are in good shape on this one. What was I saying? Yeah. So I mean, you know, the combination of things, like just the fact that I paint really small, you know, that's kind of the style. But I don't have a topic. I mean, I like to paint cars, and I love to, you know, do technology and, you know, landscapes and stuff. But I'm not like, you know, George O'Keeffe was you know, the flowers and the occasional landscape, and, you know, Rockwell was people, you know, in everyday situations. And so, you know, they had a topic that they were always working with. You know, for me, that's not necessarily the case, which, again, at first I was worried about that. Like, shouldn't I be like, I should only be doing one thing? And yes, there's a lot of advantages to that because there's a lot of people doing art. So if you're all over the road, you know, you hear this a lot, especially when you're, you know, when I was applying for graphic design jobs and illustration jobs, your portfolio should not be all over the road. Versatility is not necessarily a good thing, you know. For an illustrator, it kind of is because, you know, you used to be, I don't know about now, but an illustrator was asked to do all kinds of things. So having shown you can show the ability that you can do all kinds of things is a good thing. But a lot of times with painters and approaching galleries and all that stuff, the suggestion or the suggestions that I always got was don't you know, give them one thing. You know, if you like painting figures, just give them figures. You know, if you like doing landscapes, just do landscapes. Because if you give them too much, then, you know, it seems like you're diluted and you don't really know what you want to do. I don't care. You know, for me, the topic is secondary to the story. You know what I mean? So I'll paint anything. I mean, I gravitate towards landscapes and, you know, technology, cars and stuff. But yeah, I mean, I'm not locked in. If you know, there's a nature picture that I want to do, you know, birds or bugs or whatever, I mean, then I'll do it. It's just, for me, the style is how I paint it, not what I paint. So it's another big thing too. Oh, I love this. This is good. Now this building is too white. See how this one we put that neat grayish face on it? I really should do that on this one, but I probably could get away with putting the windows in before I do that. So I'll actually knock out this building too, which would be a bonus. I did not count on that. And I like that. I like bonus buildings, especially big bonus buildings. You know, this little, well, it's not little, but this white building here is, for this area of the painting, there's a lot of real estate. You know what I mean? Like, this is an entire block in this one building, which is great because that means in about 5 seconds we're going to be done with it, you know? And there's not much going on. It's basically just like this white, you know, with a few rando windows in it, which is nice. And then there's the pinkish building behind it, so I don't want to do that. Leads into that, which leads into that. Lovely. That's stunning. That's great. That's the road. It's along the river. Oh yeah, what do you know? Okay. Yeah, maybe we'll put the face of this building in. It's pretty much the whole thing except the top, so it should be pretty easy. I need a copy. Oh, I need a copy. Yeah, so that, that getting all tied up with style and, that kind of thing. I'm glad I don't think about it much anymore. And you know what? I'm telling you what I feel. This may not be what really is. You know what I mean? Like, if you go to a, huge gallery right now and ask them, they may still say, yeah, we really want to see one type of thing from an artist. We don't want to see it all over the road. I don't know. I say all that, and at the end of the day, my stuff is kind of all, the same. Like if I go show my portfolio, it's a lot of landscapes and a lot of motorcycles and cars and stuff. So it's pretty much that, And then, of course, like I was fortunate that, I never followed whatever trends were going on, which is if you're trying to get your name out there by, jumping on the bandwagon, it's so tough. It's really, really tough. Because by the time you get your, kind of your feet underneath you and you've start to make a name for yourself, you're already behind everyone else. Everyone else is already on that bandwagon, and then the new one's already out while you're just getting your feet underneath you on the bandwagon you jumped on. So I don't know. I never liked that. Lovely. Oh, this is fantastic. All the stuff we're doing. Good. So now at this point, I'm going to start moving back across. Yeah. Can I do that? How much info do I have there? All right, I get that little black building. I can go up to that black building. I bet I can. Yeah. I was just looking to see what I would need to airbrush as opposed to, just kind of running in there and doing it. All right, so this street here connects with this street we just painted, which is kind of interesting. So we're going to make sure we keep that connection. So there's that street. The street continues on up here. Yeah, like about here. Okay, good. That's all I need. Just something to be a landmark for that. Yeah, so no bandwagoning, like you'll never, it's super hard, to get there, you know what I mean? It's like you'll just always be chasing it, And again, that's if what's going on the bandwagon is what you really love, like if you see something that's really popular and you're like, man, that's exactly what I want to be painting like. And it doesn't have anything to do with the bandwagon. Like you're not saying, well, if I'm going to be famous, I got to do this thing. Or, if I want to make some money, I got to do this thing. If it's that, don't even, I mean, well, yeah, I guess you could jump on and try to make some cash or whatever if that's your goal. But if you're looking for any kind of longevity, then nah, it's not gonna give you anything. So the other side of that too is, say, the bandwagon thing comes along and you really love it. Like you're like, wow, this is really, really cool. Like I love this, then that's different, because now you've found something that you really like. And the way you can tell that is that when the music stops and everyone moves on to something else, you're still doing that thing. You're still doing whatever that was because you love it. You're like, wow, this is really cool. So that's different. something resonates with you, it resonates with you, and that's it. All right, there's this, and there's that pink building. Little tiny pink square. How's this red doing? Not real good. Doing good enough, probably. Yeah. Nice. Pink, which is right here. I love these little tiny flecks of color. Makes me happy. All right, perfect. Let's stop it there, and we'll take a look at the whole thing. And there we go. That's what we got so far. So there's our little, I'll grab a better pointer. There's our little brick building. So we filled in this neighborhood right by there, and then we finished up this little building. We went right out to the water. So now we're going to come back, and we're just going to kind of typewriter all the way over to the right here. And yeah, we're getting there. So important to remember the scale of this painting, not the scale size-wise, but the intensity of this painting. Generations, the Harley Davidson Rusty Motorcycle, that was just over 60 episodes. I think it was 63 episodes. We're already on 63 or 62 episodes, or 61. It's 61. We're on 61 episodes with this guy right here, and we're maybe like 2/3 of the way through this painting. So a lot of times I get asked about the values of paintings and how that works and how one relates to another. For me, it's time and effort put into a painting will often determine the overall value of it. So a little painting like this little 2x4 inch painting, has as much work in it, or probably more work in it, than even some of the bigger paintings. So that's something to keep in mind too with what's going on in this. And now you get to see why it is what it is. All right, so there you go. Thank you for hanging out with me. You guys are the best. I see you all there in the live chat. You guys are awesome. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe before you check out. And if you're hanging out watching this after the fact, welcome. Thank you very much for watching the video. And you can also hit that like button. That'd be great. You could also become a member here on this channel, which would be fantastic. That would allow you to get a 10% discount on my website all the time, as well as early access to the Time-Lapse Tuesday video, which we have every week. All right, so that's what I got. So for Steve Leahy and Through Lachlan's Eyes, I will catch you guys all next week. Have a good one.